Hello everyone, today is August 14th, 2010, and I'm making this video to discuss the establishment's attacks on Rand Paul. Now, as all of you well may know, Rand Paul is the Republican Senate candidate in the state of Kentucky, and he has also been considered the most controversial. And, controversial according to the mainstream corporate media means being a constitutionalist, someone who supports the Bill of Rights, someone who is opposed to the Federal Reserve. You get the picture. And I remember just a few days ago I logged on to MSNBC.com, and one of their main political headlines in the politics section was about the kidnapping hoax involving Rand Paul. I mean, it's ridiculous. You have a mainstream outlet like MSNBC, which, it's not surprising that it's MSNBC. And I'm pretty sure, as well as CNN and many other outlets, they took some hoax and they used it as a legitimate political news story. Whereas, if you saw that kind of news story, that kind of hoax being thrown out there against a Democratic candidate or against a Republican candidate who is a total rhino and, is, basically has no principles to their name, they wouldn't have talked about it. They wouldn't have bothered posting an article about it. But on MSNBC.com, they decided to do that. And it was just disgusting. I'm like, seriously? This is a total defamation of Rand Paul, who is a legitimate man. He supports the Bill of Rights and the Constitution all the way. And the one thing that kind of irks them is that he brings up issues that no one else will bring up. You won't hear any other Republican hack from any other state bring up the issue of the Federal Reserve, Obamacare, and the ideas that he presents, the limited government ideas that he puts forth. And, I'll read you an article that I found on Infowars.com. And it's just about the kidnapping hoax that they used. It was like the latest media hoax targeting the Kentucky primary winner Rand Paul has exploded in the establishment's face after a claim that Paul kidnapped a woman during a college prank was revealed to be completely mischaracterized, showing once again how desperate the system is to discredit Paul and prevent him from leading a populist revolt against the status quo. And also, not to mention, the other day on Google Trends, the number one hot topics and the number one search trend was Rand Paul hoax. And that was by the Info Warriors, constantly searching that on Google. And they did a good job of putting it out there and people leading to that article to read that it's just nothing but bull crap. And it really is disappointing because Rand Paul is probably the most legitimate candidate you're going to see this election. All right. Yeah, there's some other good candidates out there like Sharon Engel, even though she's not as articulate and she hasn't been in the press that much. She is, 10 times better than that hack Harry Reid. There's also many other people out there like Marco Rubio, Pat Toomey, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, you name it. Unfortunately, the one guy that I wish would have definitely, had won. I mean, yeah, I was rooting for Rand Paul and Sharon Engel. And then the third one that unfortunately did not win, and most of us saw it not happening, was Peter Schiff, who came in third in the Connecticut primary this week. And that was expected since, he barely got any press coverage and he wasn't even mentioned. So, he is a totally a different type of Republican. Most of the Republicans that we have seen in the past 10 years or so have been mainly these rhinos, moderates, or neocons. And every once in a while you'll see a conservative, but they won't bring up very important issues like he is bringing up. I'll read you the one about he on his website, randpaul2010.com. And on the issues section, he discusses bailouts, saying federal bailouts reward inefficient and corrupt management, rob taxpayers, hurt smaller and more responsible private firms, exasperate our budget problems, explode national debt, and destroy the dollar. Even more importantly, any bailout of private industry is in direct violation of the Constitution. It is a transfer of wealth from those who have earned to those who have squandered. The federal government has overstepped its enumerated powers as stipulated in the supreme law of land. And so he says that he's opposed all federal bailouts, including the $700 billion banker bailout, AIG, auto bailouts, trillions of dollars to the Fed that they've printed out. So, this guy is totally anti-establishment. And meanwhile, you look on corporate media, go on to MSNBC, CNN, even sometimes Fox News, you read any magazine, any major newspaper, and they say the same crap. Oh, well, the bailouts might have actually helped. No, they were illegal. It was just a total steal. This is just basically how you sum it up. It was a steal. And people at the time, 2 years ago, or almost 2 years ago, when the $700 billion bailout was presented, many people, everyone from Barack Obama to John McCain to George Bush, who was the current president at the time, everyone with an R or a D after their last name had supported this big bailout. And people thought, it must be necessary if both parties are supporting it. No, what you have to understand is that both parties are owned by the same special interests. They are owned by the same group of puppet masters. That's what we have to understand here. There are some small differences between the parties, but overall, at the end of the day, when you look at it, they're both pretty much owned by the same special interests. Here's what he says about the Fed. With so much blame going around for the current financial crisis, it is surprising that so few in the mainstream press have discussed the role of the Fed. For too long, the Federal Reserve has operated behind a shroud of mystery. As senator, I would make sure that all Americans understand the dangers of unsound monetary policy and shed the light of the secretive organization. He discusses the history of it and all this other stuff. And so that's another reason why the establishment hates him. And they're out to get him no matter how bogus the story is. They'll put it out there as long as this guy does not get into office, because he is actually bringing up important issues that need to be heard. He also believes that on national defense, that the number one national defense priority isn't, just random terrorists. It should be the main one, is border security. He says, I believe the primary constitutional function of the federal government is national defense. All right, that's agreeable. I believe our greatest national security threat is our lack of border security. On 9/11, 16 of the 19 hijackers were on legal student visas, but were not in school or in the states they were supposed to be in. 10 years later, we are still not policing who we grant visas to. We gave a visa to a Nigerian who had made 2 trips to Yemen, bought a one-way ticket with cash and no baggage, and his dad tipped off the U.S. Embassy that he had been radicalized. And so he proposes a moratorium on visas from about 10 rogue nations or anybody that has traveled to those nations, and he would keep it in place until the government can prove they can manage the visa process intelligently. He also believes that terrorists captured in the battlefield should be tried in military tribunals at Gitmo instead of trying them in civilian courts, which is just ridiculous. And I believe that when we must fight, we declare war as the Constitution mandates, and we fight to win. That we fight only under U.S. commander and not the UN. Good. And I believe that defending this country is the primary, most important constitutional function of the government. Okay, yeah. And so, there you go. So these are some ideas that are being presented that you won't hear from most Republicans. And this is why he is the most attractive one of this election cycle. And so if many of you haven't really, you've heard about, I'm pretty sure you guys have heard about him, but haven't really checked out what he's had to say, go to randpaul2010.com, read the issues. Pretty short and simple. It's not long and drawn out. It just gets to the point. So go there. I totally recommend it. And ignore the desperate establishment's attacks on Rand Paul. They're ridiculous. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Leave a comment, video response, the usual. See you next time.